And the Eurus Energy, starting maybe 1980s, starting from the California, and deploying a business, wind business, from the European countries, UK, Spain, Italy, Norway. But we think that is the time of Japan. We come back to our home country because, as you know, the new feed-in tariff system was introduced after Fukushima accident. So I'd like to talk about one by one. And this is a table of the Japanese government scenario. There are three options, and it's announced last year, and it's previous government decided these three options. And the actual one, the first line, is nuclear power is covering 26%. And the current plan is 45%. Currently means that before Fukushima, the nuclear power is expected to cover the 45% in the year about 2030. But after Fukushima, the Japanese government showed some options how to deal with the nuclear power. And the previous government would like to fade out the nuclear power. That means option one, nuclear power to coming to zero in the year of 2030. But the current government, it's after the general election last December, LDP would like to choose, would like to choose maybe option two. And so that means to keep some portion for nuclear power. But fortunately, every political parties are supporting to renewable energy. Their difference, their attitudes is only different in terms of the attitudes for nuclear power. And the option two, it may be, it seems more realistic currently, and it covers renewable energy. Option two is covering 30, and then option three is 25 to 30. And talking about how the volume of the wind power installations in Japan, it's in the fiscal year 2012, it's 2.6 gigawatts. And it seems that expanding gradually, but it's a little bit delayed compared to the world standard. It's because there's a system change after 2012, and before that there was a system of RPS, Renewable Portfolio Standard. It's 1/3 of the construction cost was subsidized by the government, and it reinforced the utility to purchase some portions from the renewable energy. But after 2012, it's changed, and the Japanese government introduced a feed-in tariff system. But the new system has some merits, but also the demerits. That means the feed-in tariff system guarantees a price, but it doesn't guarantee the volume. While the RPS system guarantees the volume, because it requires the utility to purchase some portions of the renewable energy. But instead, they don't guarantee the price. So it depends which is better, but Japanese government decided to choose and setting a higher tariff for renewable energy. The wind power, it's 22 yen, and adding by 5% consumer tax, it leading to 23.1. It almost 25 US cents or something like that. And it's a very constructed, excuse me, it's a big construct between wind power and PB. And PB was the new tariff last year was 40 yen per kilowatt hour. That means including a 5% consumer tax and 42 yen, it's almost more than 45 US cents. It's almost doubled compared to the wind power. And many foreigners asked me why the tariff for feed-in tariff of Japan is so high. There are some reasons for that. The one is yen had been very appreciated, but now it's gradually adjusted. And the second reason is the natural condition in Japan is very severe. You can imagine that the earthquake, tsunami, or typhoon, or lightning, there are a lot of natural conditions. And there's some, in the mountainous areas that we have turbulence. And the third reason is it's the result of the severe natural conditions. The Japanese government demanded a very severe regulation to protect the wind turbines against severe nature. And the fourth reason, the tariff is a very expensive one, is Japanese wind farms are very small scale. That the majority of wind farms are less than 5 turbines. So we couldn't enjoy the economies of scale. So there are a lot of reasons that high tariff of feed-in tariff of Japan. And in other aspects, that the wind turbines cost per the total construction cost is about around half in Japan, compared to the world standard, maybe 2/3 of the total construction cost. That means there is a lot of additional cost. EPC cost is very expensive in Japan due to the severe cost is high for the mountainous area construction, and also for the severe regulation of the government, and to protect for the earthquake or something like that. But on one point I'd like to say that for the consumer's standpoint, wind power is the most efficient one. That means the Japanese Japanese are discussing the burden by feed-in tariff, because you can introduce green power, but we can pay more. But in such a perspective, the wind power is a very efficient one, and it's twice efficient compared to the PB. This is a table of the wind power generations economies, and the horizontal line is purchase rate per kilowatt hour. And the vertical line is period of purchasing. So it's a combination of the purchase rate and purchase period. And crossing here, actually the 22 yen and 20 years. It guarantees the 7.7% IRR, internal rate of return. And it's relatively high because the Japanese government would like to accelerate especially the first 3 years to promote the renewable energy. And after 3 years, it will be adjusted, but actually the second year, it means this year, the Japanese government thought that for PV, it's too expensive. So they cut 10%. And it means that 40% to 40 yen to 36 yen. But still, it's a boom for PV power in Japan. And the second point that there is some distortion of the competition between PV and wind power. Because PV, in Japan, PV power is not required for the environment impact assessment. But for the wind power, it's required from the last October. It needs, it's had been, on a voluntary basis, it's actually proceeded, but it's legally required. So wind power is handicapped in that sense. And the third problem may be that there is no new tariff level for the offshore wind power. And the Japanese government thought that it's too early for the offshore type wind. But it's a chicken egg problem. But if they set some level of tariff for the offshore, it will start and to be the standard or business incentives for offshore type. But I'll talk later. And after the new system, what is the feasibility or the possibility in Japanese wind market? Talking about the onshore type, this map shows for the distribution for each area. And in Japan, northern area is very rich, wind-rich resources. And the blue bar shows the capability or feasibility. But the red line is the limitation due to the grid transmission lines capability. So it means that there's a great gap in northern area. And if there's no limit of the transmission line, there will be 140 gigawatts. But there are a lot of restrictions for that. For example, there's some noise, so it's be far from at least 500 meters from our house, or we cannot build very steep mountains, or less than 1,000 meters high, it's impossible. So there are a lot of restrictions and limits. We can actually assume that maybe 60 gigawatts will be the realistic target. And just roughly, it cannot be realized, so we assume that the 30 gigawatts may be possible in the future. And the same method, we can imagine that for the offshore type, maybe 30 gigawatts. So totally, the Japan Wind Power Association estimates that in the year of 2050, 50 gigawatts may be possible. And this chart shows that after 2020 or 25, offshore type wind power starting. And the purple one is violet one is onshore, offshore, and the fixed bottom type. And the yellow is the floating type. And Japan is surrounded by the sea, so we have a great possibility for the offshore. But instead, the sea is very steep and getting deeper rapidly. So offshore type is more feasible, we think. And as I said, currently the great test restrict for the wind power is a grid system problem. Japan is divided into two frequencies, and the eastern part is supplied by 50 Hertz cycles, but the western part is supplied by 60 Hertz. So it's some connections between that, but generally it's separated. And there's 10 franchised utilities, and each utility had established or organized their efficient networks in each franchised area. So there are some connections between utility, but it's not enough. And especially the northern area to the Tokyo and the metropolitan area, it's a lack of transmission lines capability. It's a great problem for us. And there's, other than grid system, there is some restrictions or deregulation should be done for the expansion of the wind power. The first one, environmental impact assessment, I told already. It's required a lot of cost and years for wind power. And the second one is the Agricultural Land Act. So it's a great restriction to transfer from the agricultural area to the wind power. We need a very small area, just towers. Towers are a small area, but the Ministry of Agriculture doesn't agree for that. And the third one, the building codes, and some same as skyscrapers is reinforced for wind power. So we insisted that it's too strict for the wind power and wind turbines, but it's not accepted by the Japanese government. And there is some other Forest Act or Natural Parks Act. So there are a lot of regulations that limit the expansion of wind power.